Bill Scotting, CEO of First Tin. Welcome to Rapallo. I'm Catt from Arlington. Thanks for coming to Italy. What do you think?
Love it, mate.
Yeah.
Great location, great place. Looking forward to the food,
Yeah.
the wine.
Well, now you know when you speak to me on the phone, this is where I'm walking around. This is the place here on the roof terrace where I like to have my coffee in the morning and my wine in the evening and take that view.
Yeah. Now I know why you lose concentration when I'm talking to you.
So, Bill, First Tin. Can we talk about your CEO of First Tin, but in the context of your previous roles? So, you used to run the mining group at ArcelorMittal. You ran Nearstar, which was a big zinc business, so zinc and steel. This is tin. Why did you take it on, and how does this opportunity compare to those careers that you've had before?
Yeah, it seems out of my career I've gone from big bulks to base to lithium, now tin. The older I get, the smaller it gets. Why did I take it on? I mean, firstly, Charlie approached me, Thomas approached me.
Charlie and Thomas.
Charlie's the chairman of First Tin, Thomas the former CEO.
Okay.
As Thomas was moving on, they approached me and said, would I be interested in taking over from Thomas? I hadn't looked at tin recently, so I had a little bit of an investigation, and I really liked what I saw. I think tin for me is the most structurally attractive metal out there. It reminds me of iron ore 20 years ago in some of the dynamics, not the same scale, but the dynamics, the structural changes. You've got structural change in growth coming from a variety of sources, so the demand, ITA forecast demand will be up 30% by 2030, but on the supply side it's really interesting. Highly concentrated in countries, so China, Indonesia and Myanmar, and then DRC, Latin America. Only 3% of tin comes from the OECD. So it's geopolitically risky and it's not growing. It's not grown in the last 10 years. There's historic reasons for that. So you've got this intersection of growing demand driven by energy, driven by the digital transformation. At the same time, you've got a historic issue on supply. It's not coming through. So you can see a real deficit coming. So that's the macro. And then I went and had a look at the two assets. And then I started to get even more excited, because I think Taronga in Australia, which people have called the next new tin mine, and I believe that will be the case. It's arguably the simplest operation, or will be the simplest operation I've ever seen. It's going to be low cost, low capex, low tech, high value. And the reason for that is the geology and the mineralogy that comes with that. That's a natural endowment which is going to make this mine so good. The outcrops on the side of a hill, so you're just taking off the hill. The mineralogy is very, very simple. You'll have low cost open pit mining, 1-to-1 strip ratio. The cassiterite is very coarse grained, appears in quartz veins in the host rock. It fractures along those veins, and then it very easily upgrades through simple gravity separation. So a simple, low-tech, low-cost mine. And at these tin prices, it's going to be very cash generative going forward, and that's what the DFS we published showed. And then when I went to Germany, something entirely different. Again, it's a historic tin area, but it'll be underground. It's a more complex resource in that it's polymetallic. So as well as the tin, you get some zinc, you get some magnetite, you get some indium, copper, silver. All these things will compensate for the higher cost of being underground. So I looked at these assets and thought, great macro, really good assets. You look at the rest of the supply coming on, I could find just 2 projects with definitive feasibility studies, a number of projects at pre-feas level, then concepts. So where's the supply coming from? Going to be a gap, going to be a deficit, and that's going to drive returns. And that's why I came in.
Good. So, Bill, Taronga, the Australian projects in the state of New South Wales, has seen 2 projects stopped in New South Wales in terms of permitting in the last few months.
Yep.
How does that affect your view of Taronga and its pathway to production?
It doesn't really affect my view. I know the team in Australia, and you talk to people there, people are a little bit exercised about the whole issue, a bit emotional about it. But if, I'm a bit remote, sitting in London, I go to Australia, but if you take a step back, I think there's specific circumstances around both those situations. I've looked at those. I don't see the same issues in our project in Taronga, but I learned from what was done there. So I think about the Bowden situation and the fact that they didn't include the energy as part of it. So for our permitting, we make sure now we're going over everything to make sure we're putting the whole project in the environmental impact statement, so we put it all there. So we learn from that. I think the other difference is there's different land uses in Bowden's, more competition in our area. There's very strong community support, there's council support. It's not a historic farming area, it's a historic mining area, so slightly different circumstances. We have native title approval for the development. So when you think about the McPhillamys situation, which was a federal thing, I think the federal government responded to some of the concerns coming out of other issues. Again, you look at our development, the native title, the Aboriginal land councils, they've done the walkover. There's no significant heritage issues on our site, and they're supportive of the project. So yes, you look at them, it does raise the risk or the perception of risk, but when I go into the detail, I'm not finding anything which is making me question the viability, the feasibility, the permittability of our project.
And so, Bill, I understand that there's a new strategic shareholder on the First 10 register,
Yep.
Metals X.
Yep.
Why did they buy their stake?
Well, you have to talk to Metals X as to why they bought it. What I can say is that we're very glad to have them on board, to have a strategic shareholder of their nature, of their experience, their balance sheet to come in. It gives us confidence going forward. It's clearly, for me, an endorsement of our project, that they see it as a viable, as a future tin project. I heard Brett, the executive director, at a recent conference ask that question, said that he'd looked at all the deposits around the world in tin, and this was the one that met their criteria. That's great to hear.
Yep.
I take it as a very positive.
Yeah, well, it's hard to interpret it any other way, and I think they've got a pile of cash on their balance sheet, and they could use some growth. So there's the Australian project, but there's also a project in Germany.
Yep.
How do I think about the value of the company Australia versus Germany, and where is the German project at in terms of development?
Okay, the German project's a little bit behind the one in Taronga. They're both going through permitting. The German one has, in effect, had a pre-feasibility option study. It's not done the DFS yet. In terms of scale, they're actually quite similar in terms of their resource base after the big upgrade we did in Germany. As I said before, it's a slightly different type of deposit. The way I think about value creation, as a junior, the market's been tough. The company IPO'd, it had some cash there which has been used on the DFS, on permitting, on upgrading resources. So you're watching the cash go down. You want to use it wisely and where you get the most value creation. And coming in, looked at the situation, looked where the market was, and we focused very much on Taronga, getting that DFS out. And in Germany, we scaled back. We just focused on the MRE update because of where it was in the permitting. But as a junior, your share price will respond with the commodity price, but also as you go through the project development and start to de-risk the project. And that de-risking comes through your studies, your resource base, and then the permitting. And as it gets closer to fruition, you should start to see the share price respond because people have a line of sight to cash flow. And we can see that getting closer and closer with Taronga. I see Taronga being very cash generative at these tin prices, how to use that cash going forward. We have satellites we can develop around Taronga at relatively low capex. We have the Tinga fields southwest of Taronga is another option. We have Germany and we have the German satellites. So there's a number of growth options that we have. So in the future we can take these and build various horizons for growth for the company. Ultimately the shareholders will determine what we do and how we use the cash, but I can provide these options.
Right. And are you a seller or a builder of the Taronga mine firstly?
It's a good question. I think that's ultimately something for the shareholders to determine. I came in with an expectation to build these projects when I looked at the tin outlook, when I looked at the projects. That's what I'm doing. And with the cash we've had available, we've extended the exploration licenses, taken more land around there, which gives us a bigger resource space going forward. And with my view of the tin price over the medium to longer term, I can see building a business here. But ultimately, the market will determine the ownership and what happens.
Yep, makes sense. And lastly, Bill, just to not keep you from your cocktail or glass of wine, as I look through the next year, through the end of 2025, what can the shareholders of First Tin look forward to?
Okay, in the next few months, it's really about the permitting in Taronga. So we need to finish off the environmental impact statement and submit that. We've already submitted the scoping report and got the Secretary's advice on what has to go into the environmental statement. We work on that. Within the early part of next year, we'll submit that. Then it's a process of it being assessed by the relevant authorities, going through exhibition, and hopefully then in the second half of next year we'll have the developmental approval given. And during that process, as that goes along, of course, we'll be working on project financing. Right. The capex is around $120 million US. We have to think about how to project finance that. Various discussions underway. We'll take those forward. In Germany, again, there'll be work on the permitting, and hopefully news will come out on the progress on that.
Okay, very good. Bill, thank you so much for coming to the Arlington Rapallo.
Pleasure.
Looking forward to having a glass of wine with you later. Enjoy the Italian Riviera.
Will do. Thanks very much, Simon.
Pleasure, buddy.
Thanks.